Order online at picassospizza.net.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to this Trainwreck Sports Podcast, where we are here to pay the bills, presented by Picasso's Pizza. This is Jake Micah, joined, as always, by Mike Bunt and Ajay Cebulski, as we are here in the middle, the right smack dab in the middle of the off season. It is June 24th. Guys, how are you holding up? Is it sweltering heat in Western New York today, as it is here in Chicago? I think there's heat pretty sure the whole country is just like covered in a 100-degree heat right now. But how are you guys doing?
I'm melting, but the Sabres are keeping me nice and cool as I get ready for the NHL draft and off season. But I know this is a football show, and I don't want to piss off AJ. So I'm excited to talk some Bills football right now.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm doing true,
well.
but
yeah, I'm doing well. I came off a golf trip this last weekend with a lot of my buddies, so that was real fun. It was hot out there on the course too. Played a lot of golf. I'm not the best golfer, so it was a lot for me. But good to be back home. Summer school is finishing up in terms of my classes with that, so that's a good thing here as we round the 4th of July a week away. It's crazy how fast it goes. So looking forward to that and talking some Bills football here today.
Yeah, it's pretty wild that next weekend we're at the 4th here. Like I don't know where the time, but I feel like being an adult is the time just doesn't really matter anymore. Like the days just keep going. I'm just like, oh, it's June. Oh yeah, now it's July. It's kind of hot today. It's kind of cold today. We're just going through now. But yeah, glad to hear you guys are doing good. It's been great here. Besides, I don't do well that's why I live in the northern parts of this country all my entire life, because I don't do well in this kind of heat. So I'm waiting for it to cool down as well. But this Bills season, the Bills off season, really never cools down. I guess if this is the time, it is right now. But we'll be back in training camp in a little, I think about a month here. I don't remember. Yeah, like exactly right on the dot here. So we're right around the corner, and we wanted to kind of look back at the off season here and discuss if the Bills had a successful off season. That's what I wanted to talk about today. But then I was like, what does that even like really mean? And I feel like that's where we can start the conversation, because and there's context for the Bills, right? Like the Bills are a team who is one of the contending teams, who has been one of the contending teams in the league. And so their definition of success in an off season is obviously different from what like the Cleveland Browns definition of success this offseason was, or something like that. So I'm interested to hear from you guys as you follow. We've followed the Buffalo Bills our whole lives and the NFL, but the Bills themselves have been basically every type of team in our existence, rebuilding, contending, and everything in between. So what does a successful, like if you're looking for certain things, if you were a GM, what would you think? And let's start with you, Mike, like would be successful in an off season? Is it filling, like, is it just roster management? Is it like team, like chemistry? Is it just looking back at last year? Is it looking forward? Like, what do you think teams look at and assess the most in the off season and try to constitute as a success? Or do they just say whatever they did is a success because they're trying to keep their jobs and they want to make it look good no matter what?
Well, number one, they will always say that whatever they did was a success, even if it wasn't. Every team is different. Obviously, the Bills are in a championship window. They have an MVP quarterback. So for the Bills, a successful offseason is making sure they're still in a position where they can compete for a championship. So last year, it was a difficult offseason. They had to let go of a lot of players. They had to make things work with limited salary cap room. And they ended up going all the way back to the AFC Championship, which means last year was a resounding success, in my opinion, even if we're not happy with how the Kansas City game ended in the AFC Championship. Now, talking about this offseason, it was about taking that next step. So I have a few different ways I look at it. First off, short term, are you giving yourself the best chance to compete for a Super Bowl, win the division, take care of your goals in 2025? And then long term, are you setting yourselves up for not just one run at it, but multiple runs in the next 3 to 5 years with Josh Allen as your quarterback? And I think they accomplished both of those goals this offseason, which is why I would give them an A for how they handled it. First off, You identified the talent on your team that you believe is part of the future, your core group, and you extended 4 of your 5 key players, guys like Khalil Shakir, Terrell Bernard, Gregory Rousseau, Christian Benford. Now, James Cook, we'll see what happens there. I'm not going to close the door completely, but not looking good at the moment. Then number 2, you identified the weaknesses of your roster, which were obviously wide receiver and defensive line. And what I like about it on the defensive line aspect of it, you double dip. And same with cornerback too. So you were able to bring in talented free agents like Joey Bosa, like Michael Hoyt and Larry Ojanobi. And then at corner, you bring back Trey White. You bring back Dane Jackson, depth pieces to make sure that you have some depth. And at wide receiver, you bring in Joshua Palmer, Elijah Moore. But then in the draft, you double down defensively. You were able to get high-level talent in the first round in Maxwell Hairston, who will probably be your starting number 2 corner for years to come across Christian Benford, which is something that the Bills really haven't had, is 2 high-end corners at the same time. Then defensive line, bringing in a TJ Sanders, a Landon Jackson, a Walker. You have the ability for these guys to not just be thrown in right away and expect them to do everything, which is what the Sabres do. And for the hockey team, let's just expect all of our young kids to produce right away. No, you can bring them in, you can ease them in, and if they look great right away, you can give them an opportunity to shine. So from a team development side, I love it. From a culture side, I think this team has the right culture, the right guys in place, and I think this was a very productive offseason. And you go into this year saying they're one of the 3 favorites in the AFC to get there. You just have to hope that this is the year they finally get past Kansas City, and hopefully Baltimore doesn't get in their way either.
Yeah, I think this is definitely my favorite Brandon Beane offseason. Now, I will say the Ojanobi Hoyt signing, or the Ojanobi and Hoyt signings are interesting in terms of what they can do. And again, they're not signing these big major contracts, but I'm always like a wait and see kind of person. So I idealistically, like Josh Palmer, he's had his moments in LA, right? And they've addressed that need a receiver. Elijah Moore, kind of a retread at the position. So obviously their cap situation and paying a quarterback and Stephon Diggs dead cap. There's a lot of things that play into, you're playing a lot of players, a lot of money. You extended all those players before, really free agency even started or around there. So I think this Bills team is set up for success. I think they always will be. But they have not gotten enough out of the offseason, I think, the last few years. We were saying the same thing last year, right? Oh, they brought in Curtis Samuel in years before that. And we always get really excited about all these on paper signings right now in June. But I don't, on paper and how I felt going into it, Brandon Beane, he filled the holes he needed to. He addressed the defensive line, which is the biggest weakness. And on paper, that feels really good right now going into this season. And I think the Bills will be right there again. But again, it comes down to how these guys will actually perform. How will those guys look off the PEDs in the 6-game suspension? Will they be able to, contribute in a rotational role? Will a Joey Bosa be able to stay healthy? Will a Josh Palmer actually be able to be a number 2 like we expected from a Curtis Samuel last season that we paid to be that 2-3 receiver, and he didn't pan out to be that way. So right now it looks great, and I really like what Brandon Beane did, and I really appreciate his efforts. I think he really put a lot of eggs in multiple baskets to really try and build this team around Josh Allen and this, in Sean McDermott defensively. So we'll see it happens, but I really like it on paper. But I want to make sure to differentiate that. A lot of things can change from now until when the pads come on and these guys are actually, on the field and we see what they're actually made of.
Yeah, you guys made a lot of great points, and it touches on the point that I wanted to make about this specific, like the Bills and their success and everything is what you just said, AJ, like a lot of it is just going to be like, it's going to be constituted to how the battles play out in training camp and how they start the season and how they play obviously throughout the whole year, of course. But they clearly put their, you could see where with limited resources and the way that the Bills could kind of move this offseason, the way they allocated the resources was really important. Like we talked about that a lot leading up to free agency on this show. Like, where are they going to allocate? Where are they going to spend and pay attention to? Like, what do they think? Like when the Bills did their self-scouting, which I think is one of the biggest keys to having a successful offseason is the looking at yourself. What did we do wrong? Where can we get better? And assessing that properly, not just assessing it, but like assessing it and diagnosing it properly. And I think we all thought that the trenches, especially defensively, and also just building up more depth in the secondary and having more options there were two glaring weaknesses when we got down to the end of it. And what did Brandon Beane go out and do in a lot of different ways, address those two positions? And I think that those are the big glaring needs that I saw. And just from that perspective, and then just the type of guys, which I think the Bills have been pretty good about doing there every offseason, but you want the type of character guys that you hear about. Like, the Bills don't take a lot of chances on guys like that, right? Like, and this is a team that is built on chemistry, and that's something you want to see, I think, from a successful offseason. Who's like James Cook not showing up could kind of is a con in this department. It's kind of a demerit in this department. Now, he showed up to mandatory minicamp, and obviously he ends up there and participates in everything else. But that whole saga is a factor that we could discuss and be like, is that unsuccessful because this disrupted the team in such a way you didn't handle your business in that way? Now, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I don't particularly think that's fair, because that's just how life in the NFL is going to work sometimes, especially with the running back position. But those are the types of things I'm looking at too here. Is like, yeah, I like what they did on paper to address the needs that they did, but also like the balance of this team and in just the type of guys they bring in is so important to the success that they've had. And I do think did a good job with that, but I do think they're a bit like some signs over the last couple of years, like the Diggs saga. We don't have to rehash or relitigate, Stephon Diggs and everything else, but that was a real test on the culture that we thought was like Teflon, right? Like at least to that point, publicly, it had been Teflon. And now this is a new iteration starting from last year with new leadership, new everything else. And it was all positives. Like I can't complain about anything, the way that played out with the leadership, the core of the team, and everything else they have going into this year. But it's a big challenge to do it again. But I do think they insulated the guys properly, but they've had some tests. Like the Cook thing's a test for them. Bouncing back from losing in the way that they did is a real test for this team mentally. But I think that the GM and the front office and the coaching staff has set the players up for the best possible success they could have had with the resources they've had. I think that's a fair assessment. So you guys are both kind of on board with that then, that they've done as much as they could to at least set the players up right now where it's not as, I feel like, just not as intensive on the higher up, the upper tier guys as last summer.
I think defensively, I feel much better going into this season. Just with all, like, you throw a lot of darts to the defensive line. A couple of those guys are gonna, pan out. That's what you're hoping, right? So you got some youth there. So you also got younger. You weren't necessarily getting older. You added two defensive tackles and an edge rusher to the mix there in the draft. So I think there's more hope in that front, and also in the safety room. I don't think DeMar Hamlin is going to be playing a lot of football this year, which for me is a good thing. Again, he's an okay player. He fit the scheme. He knew what he was doing, but I did not like him in terms of just his ability to get beat deep, and his angles on the football sometimes in the run game just weren't that clean. So you get a Cole Bishop. I feel more confident about him, right? You want to see him. You expect him to progress into year two. And again, that's all just hoping that happens. But defensively, I feel better just because you got a Cole Bishop who's returning. Taylor Rapp's got a year in the system as a full-time starter. The linebacker room's kind of set with Milano and Bernard, and you have a Dorian Williams, who I still really like. And they still have the kid from Washington they drafted, and they also signed who we haven't touched on. Who they signed? Who's a linebacker? Do they signed from
Shaq Thompson?
Jack Thompson. So he's also in the mix.
That's one we're going to forget about until training camp starts.
100%. In the corner room, same thing. Like, you add Trey White, Dane Jackson behind Maxwell Hairston, you're much deeper there too. So I think defensively, I think Brandon Beane did a much better job for Sean McDermott to give him the most resources available with the cap situation and make this defense better than what it was last year, and hopefully better than it has been in the playoffs the last few years.
Yeah.
I got to say, the defense is still an area of question for me going into this year. If there was like an area of uncertainty, like, I don't know if this is a top 10 defense yet. The hope is that it is one, but there's a lot of uncertainty with what's going on with the Bills defensively. You look at the offense, you have Josh Allen, you already know you have good running backs. you could bring up the receiver room, even if you think it's a bottom 10 unit. We all know Josh is going to elevate the talent. They'll have production. Same with the tight ends. Good offensive line. So there's really not many offensive questions with having a strong offensive line, running game, and MVP quarterback. Defensively, this is my concern. 2 years ago, they had elite talent. Expectations were high with McDermott taking over the D coordinator role. Got off to a great start, then just devastating injuries to Trey White, Matt Milano, Daquan Jones, and it just everything unraveled. And not to say they had a horrible year, but it was one of those like they're borderline top 10, like to 12 or 13. And we saw how the margins made it more difficult for the offense when the defense wasn't playing at an elite level. Now, last year, defense was kind of a concern. Third down defense. How many times did we see the other teams execute third and longs? The pass rush, it was all right, but it wasn't great. The secondary, definitely a step in the wrong direction. Big games, couldn't get a pass rush. They improved their defense, but what I'm concerned about is this. They locked up a lot of their key guys. Like they believe that Christian Benford is the guy, and they're investing in Harrison to be the guy next to him. We like Bosa across from Rousseau. We like the linebackers with Bernard and then one more year of Milano. But when I look at this defense, I don't see like a guy. I don't see anybody that I look to that is just a star. This is a defense that has been full of stars in recent years, whether that be when Poyer and Hyde were making all-pro teams, whether it be Trey White making Pro Bowls, Milano making an all-pro team, even guys on the defensive line.
Even Edmonds making Pro Bowls.
So what's and they were talking about this on a little bit on GR earlier in the morning about how everyone eats. Maybe that's a defensive thing here too, or maybe that's just something that you say when you lack a star. Or Jeremy White was comparing it to the Patriot way. But I look at this defense, and it is very much a collection of the whole is going to need to get the job done. Now, I do believe Christian Benford has star potential. He is the closest thing to an elite player on this defense. I do think that Terrell Bernard has a high-end potential, even if some things aren't always great in his game. I do think this defensive line can be solid, but I need this defense to be a top 5 to 7 unit this year. And if they're still 10 to 15 in the metrics and the different advanced analytics, I'm going to be a little concerned because they've invested a lot in this defense this season, some of it for now, some of it for the future. But I need the results to match the investment. And I don't know if it's a guarantee that's going to be the case.
Would that make you concerned about Sean McDermott, Mike?
That would make me concerned about a lot of different factors. Yeah, Sean, maybe I'd be a little concerned about Sean McDermott because Brandon Beane is definitely investing in his guys. So I don't think Beane would give all these guys long-term extensions if he didn't have McDermott signing off on it. So, yeah, I would be a little concerned with McDermott if they don't take a step forward because the excuses were built in the last 2 years. 2 years ago, injuries. Last year, young, inexperienced. And it's not like they've been bad. They were still technically above average based on metrics.
I mean, for takeaways, thank God. The takeaways are huge.
But we've come to expect, I know not in the playoffs, but we've come to expect that a McDermott defense is normally a top 5 to 7 unit in the league. And with all of these names part of it right now, I really don't think there's an excuse for them not to be. Now, last year I said they weren't a top 10 defense, and I ended up being right. I wouldn't say they're top 5 right now, but I do think they should be closer to 5 than they are 10, in my opinion. With
smartest thing you've ever said, Mike. This is the smartest. You should clip this whole 2 minutes. This is like music to my ears, dude.
If Christian Benford can play 16 games, 15 games this year, I think he is a top 5 quarterback in this league comfortably. But I think the health is what holds me back from putting him in that conversation. Other than that, are there other candidates? Like Rousseau and Oliver, I guess, are the other candidates. I don't think we can, like, last year I was saying, and that's why where I'm at too, AJ. Like last year I was like, this is the Rousseau year. He's set up with this D line to unlock him. And it just doesn't happen. They're solid players. They're good players, but I'm kind of with Mike on that with that D line where I can't count on them to be like the stars that you we're hoping at one point.
For sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, Hairston I think Hairston's the lottery ticket for them in a lot of ways too, because he's just a type that they've never even approached as with a corner. Like the speed element, the size that he like. They loved a certain type of corner. And what's that?
Does Khair fit that mold to you or no?
Well, Khair was more handsy than I think Hairston has Khair really worried me with the archetype that he was specifically in the Bills defense. Just like a big toolsy guy who uses hands a lot. Doesn't honestly just as scary. It's like unless you're like Aqib Talib and like have incredible ball skills, like it's hard to do that in the NFL. It's hard to replicate that. Like a lot of those like Rogers Cromartie, like there's so few and far between. Their guys are like crazy athletes that can pull that off. So this is a different type of risk, but how much how many times can we watch that clip of Elam running and tripping over his own feet in the AFC Championship? I'm excited to see Hairston at least have a chance to run with somebody, you know. So that's where I think he could, like you could see a vision where he's like a superstar and just like making dynamic plays all over the field. There's also a place where he's like barely able to play on the field some games because he's lost out there. So, and I think you're going to see that a lot from him this year too. But I do think the flashes come out from him this year and everybody gets tantalized like, oh my God, like what could this guy be a couple times?
So I'm going to set myself up to like get attacked in the future.
Oh boy.
I think Hairston.
You've never done that before.
I think Hairston has the ability to be the most important defensive addition the Bills have had of like the recent McDermott Bean era. Obviously, it's hard to quantify like who's the best defensive addition throughout their time because like if you look at them before they ended the drought, you would have to say Poyer High, like no doubt. You could then say Trey White because those are the guys that built the foundation for it in the past. But if you're talking recent years, I think Hairston is just something that they have not had. Now, Elam was a tremendous athlete, but Elam was also – he wasn't really – I guess you could say the same with Hairston to an extent. Elam wasn't a first-round guy. When going through the draft process, most people were saying second-round guy, somebody's going to reach and take him in the late first. Everybody wanted other cornerbacks at that period of time. Hairston with that elite speed, is he raw? If he wasn't raw, he's a top 10 pick with that type of speed. So there's probably going to be some times where we're struggling with evaluating him or we're getting upset. But the fact that he has Trey White mentoring him, I like this comment by John. Thank you for reaching out. I think that's going to be important for a guy like Hairston early, and then just his speed brings a different element. What if the Bills defense really struggled against teams like the Chiefs? It's normally been the speed component in earlier years. They couldn't keep up with the Tyreek Hills. They couldn't keep up with some of these other guys. Now, that's not to say that Tyreek Hill always killed them, but there was a lot of times you look at the Bills defense and you say they got a lot of good players, but they don't have that athlete. They don't have that guy. And I think when you already know you have the one side of the field locked down with Christian Benford, if they hit on Hairston and he ends up developing into another lockdown guy, not saying he will, but like if he can turn into an above average number 2 corner, that's going to make things extremely tough for opponents. That gives you something against Cincinnati that you didn't have in the past. That gives you something against these better passing attacks, the ability to slow them down. And if you can do that, maybe you can make them more one-dimensional. Maybe you can force them into other things that they don't want to do against you. I feel like the Bills have never really had the proper in-house answers to really adjust their defense from the regular season philosophy to what they needed to do in the playoffs to slow down upper echelon teams. Hairston is a wild card that I think can potentially give them a solution against teams that they have had trouble, I guess, containing in the past when it really matters.
It's interesting too. Adding on that, if you look at what the Bills have gone after at the corner position, you have Elam, a really fast player who just never was able to learn the system. And my point kind of is like Christian Benford came in that same year and took the job from him, and he's not the athlete he was, right? Like Maxwell Hairston, he can be the craziest athlete. He can make these splash plays. But if he doesn't learn and understand and be able to communicate with the safeties and linebackers on this defense and know what he's expected to do, it is a very complicated system. And I think that's going to be the hardest part for Hairston and any corner that comes into the system. Benford obviously picked up on it right away, and he wasn't the freak athlete. Trey White was also not a freak athlete, but his ball skills and his coverage skills and his off-man coverage was really well, and he was really good in zone coverage. So that's one of his strengths that the Bills, he kind of fit that mold, and that's why a lot of people were curious about the Kyrie Elam selection when he happened, because he was the opposite, right? A man corner, speed.
Yep.
Jake mentioned handsy, so it was quite the opposite kind of build. So with Hairston, it's going to be really about how is he going to be able to understand this defense. You saw Kyrie Elam. Jake mentioned earlier, he tripped on his own feet. Like that was just him not knowing, and maybe that was just a misstep or he's just not that good. But that he never got comfortable. He brought the playbook on the plane. He never got comfortable with this system. And he could have been the craziest athlete in the world. He could have done whatever he wanted, but it never worked in Buffalo. So with Hairston, in order for him to get to that spot and be that corner and that reliable corner, you have to have those traits like the Levi Wallaces and the Dane Jacksons have, where they're not the most athletic, but Sean McDermott will play the guy who knows what he's doing and where he's supposed to be over the guy that's the athlete. And that's why we're seeing a lot of Dane Jackson, Levi Wallace's come through the system and make an NFL career out of it, because they were able to be coached and molded. They were coachable. And now they've extended their careers, and obviously Levi's moved around and Dane Jackson's moved around a little bit. But that's just really what it's going to come down to with this Maxwell Hairston signing, is will he be able to understand the playbook and his responsibilities and Sean McDermott, in order for Sean McDermott to trust him.
Yeah, it is, especially with Trey White and Dane Jackson right there, like two guys that he has obviously. Trey probably immensely more, like a lot of trust. If they've got anything left in the tank, it's going to be hard for him to not put one of those guys out there unless Hairston did like earn complete trust. But that's one of the things like you mentioned earlier too, AJ, like they have better depth back there. I want to see what Trey White looks like out there on the field too before I decide if it's better depth. Like I'm excited about it, but it was scary. Like there's a reason he was on two different teams last year. Like there's a reason like he's on was available when he brings more value to this team, I think, off the field than he's 100%. Going to bring on the field for sure. Like 100%. Like he's obviously a net positive. And I'm happy to have him back, specifically because my brother has a Trey White jersey. So that jersey is now back in style. He was feeling upset.
This is the best part.
I know. He's like, oh, yeah, man.
Yeah, I'm still intrigued about him on the field, to be honest with you. AJ and I had disagreements.
Have you had some discussion?
Well, we had a Trey White fight. Oh, he's going to be fine in LA.
No. We had disagreements. We had disagreements about this around a year ago. I didn't know what Trey would be coming back, but I thought the Bills would keep him and accept that, okay, he's probably not going to be the same player he was, but maybe you still have another year or two of him, and you don't want to pay dead cap and other stuff like that. Obviously, I was wrong. They moved on from Trey, and he struggled mightily last year. But the Trey at the end of the season last year was much better than the Trey at the beginning of the season. Obviously, he signed in Buffalo to be a backup. I'm sure the Bills told him of their draft plans and what they were thinking with Maxwell Hairston and getting a corner in the draft to start early on. But my thought is this: people act like Trey is 35 years old and that he has had an injury where he's paralyzed from the waist down and can't even walk.
30 with a torn Achilles and ACL, Mike.
I know it's not good. It's not good. But the thing is, he's had he's had over a year since that Achilles. Some of these injuries, you need to play on it before you're comfortable again. And let's think back when everything was going with COVID, people were wondering if Trey would even return to football during that period of time. now we're at the point where Trey's making it to 30 years old. Obviously, he still has it in his heart to play football and wants to be part of this team long after most of the guys he was close to in his early years in Buffalo have moved on. So clearly he still feels a commitment to being part of this organization and trying to win a Super Bowl here. Now, if he accepts his role, which I'm assuming he's all good with, I think that's a very valuable number 3 corner, because if you told me you need 10 to 15 snaps a game from Trey, can he step up and deliver in those moments? I feel comfortable he can. I don't think he's going to get burned playing 10 to 15 snaps, maybe 20 snaps in a game. Now, if you ask me, like, do I want him to play 75% of the snaps? Absolutely not at this point in time. But I think if he can get you high-level performance for a limited amount of snaps, how is that much different than what Von Miller was doing last year? And we look at the Bills and how they've handled certain positions in the past. They've shown that they really don't think age is the biggest disqualifier to being productive on their team. This is a team that brought Josh Norman back at like 35 years old and had him starting a couple of games.
They had no one left.
But that's the thing. Like, we laugh at it. Like, Josh Norman, he's still in the NFL. Yeah. And then next thing we're like, oh, it's just a practice squad addition. He's never going to play. And then next thing you know, you're watching football games and Josh Norman is actually out there playing actual snaps. And we look earlier in Sean McDermott's tenure. This is a team that brought Frank Gore at running back. The Bills have shown Von Miller on a 6-year deal as a 32, 33-year-old. If anything, the Bills are the opposite of the Sabres. They have shown that if we think you are a good player that hopefully can provide solid veteran leadership on and off the field, that we don't mind you taking up a roster spot, because you're going to help everyone else get better as a whole, and we still think we can rely on you in a pinch. And I still believe that Trey thinks he has a little bit left in the tank. If he didn't, I don't believe he'd be out there. I don't think Trey's coming back to Buffalo thinking he is done for. And if we get a situation where Maxwell Hairston goes down and you need Trey to step up in the playoffs, well, so be it. At least you have a guy that you know is a gamer, that is familiar with the system. And one thing that, to kind of finish the point, we all talked about for the longest time in Buffalo, that it didn't matter if a corner went down to injury or if a safety went down to injury, because McDermott's system was why all these guys were successful. And then you see a lot of these guys come in like a Norman and have success. These other players, EJ Gaines comes to Buffalo, has success. Kevin Johnson back in the day comes to Buffalo, has success. A lot of these no names, Dane Jackson, Levi Wallace, they come to Buffalo. Were they great in Buffalo? No, but they were good in Buffalo and they earned them jobs in other cities. So, and then you see them elsewhere and they struggle. So if it's still McDermott's system elevating people, well, it's entirely possible that Trey being back in Buffalo might elevate his play in the same way it's elevated other people. So we can't just judge Trey based on last season. And if he is fully healthy, which he said recently, this is the first time I think he said in 3+ years where he entered a season just focused on football, not rehabbing an injury, not dealing with off the field stuff. First season, I think, in 3 years where he doesn't have any off the field concerns. You think going back to the ACL injury on Thanksgiving night against the Saints, I believe that was when he got hurt the first time.
Yes. Yep.
He's been dealing with injuries ever since that point. A healthy Trey White, I still think, has something left in the tank. We can act like he's done for. He's 30. This guy is not 35, 36. If he is fully healthy and he still has enough of a step, I think he could be a valuable number 3 corner.
Yeah, well, we'll find out right away. That's for sure, because I think I don't think it's only going to be 15, 20 snaps. I don't think it's going to be 75% of the snaps, but I think somewhere in the middle there, I think him and Hairston are going to be, I honestly think it'll just be like, hey, how we feeling, off vibes. Like, we'll see what happens
Don't count out Dane
with
Jackson.
those two.
Don't count out Dane Jackson.
Dane, hey, I know Dane always snuck his way in there more often than I gave him credit for, and produced in a lot of ways.
Can I comment to this, Matt? You're watching the wrong show right now. This is not the Sabres podcast. The Hope Train is Friday night, not tonight, Matt.
I do want to talk about John Robert mentioned Derek Forrest giving Trey his jersey number back, which is awesome. That is a name that's the name I'm looking forward to seeing the most this whole training camp, because the profile of Derek Forrest when they signed him was guy who thrived under Ron Rivera's system, then had an injury, and then had a new defensive system with Dan Quinn, and didn't get traction on that defense, didn't get playing time in his year, and now he's showing up to Buffalo, going back to a system that he really thrived in as a safety. I feel like that's a guy who could. I don't know if he's going to get a spot, but I feel like it's a nice. It's going to be an interesting subplot to that safety position that is going to be really damn competitive between Bishop, Hamlin, and I'm sure Forrest. Like, I'm sure they're going to give him the reps that at least some opportunities to try to win that job. And I wouldn't put him completely out of it, because he played. Commanders fans like swear by that guy. Like, they loved him, and they said, and you looked at when they lost him, it was a lot of, man, like Dan Quinn just didn't use him right. He didn't know what to do with him. We hope he does well. And so, hey, maybe Sean McDermott will know how to use him. And that's another sleeping option here, where it's just like, as we've been talking about, like the depth on this defense is just so much greater than it was last year, where you have guys like that, not saying he's going to like be an all pro next year, but what if he has 3 big moments during the season that, dang, sweet. Like, if you have a couple more guys that can make just a couple more of these plays, those are the margins we're talking about when you lose by 3 points in the conference championship game.
Say that Taylor Rapp was that guy last year, a safety that a lot of people had low expectations going into the season as a starter. And let's be real, Taylor Rapp had a good season. Now, he wasn't at the Poyer Hyde level that we've come to expect, but I thought Taylor Rapp was really good. And there was even an ESPN article that said it. He might be the most underrated player on the Bills defense overall, Taylor Rapp. And Forrest will be interesting to see how he fits in, because it does seem like there might be a little bit of an open competition next to Taylor Rapp. Obviously, everybody wants Cole Bishop to get it, but you need to be healthy. You need to be on the field. Cole Bishop hasn't shown that yet that he can be that. You look at Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin is so tough to talk about for me, because he went from being a young, under-the-radar pick who was forced into an opportunity early in his career before he was probably ready for it, had ups and downs. Obviously, the incident in Cincinnati, becomes known internationally and now a celebrity. And because of that, I think he's become a polarizing figure to where a lot of Bills fans, they don't love Damar Hamlin because they know he's not a great player, but he gets a lot of attention due to what happened in the past in his story. And I feel like it's very difficult for people to have balanced, level-headed conversations about Damar. I think he's a good backup. I have no issue with Damar Hamlin as a backup. I don't want him starting on my team. And you know what? Amazing story that even earned a starting spot last year. But if Forrest is the backup and you have Cole Bishop starting, I'm fine with it. I don't know if I need Damar Hamlin on this Bills roster going forward, but I'm definitely hoping that someone opposite of Taylor Rapp steps up, because we really don't know who that number 2 safety is right now. That might be the biggest. If you go position by position on the Bills right now, number 2 safety opposite Taylor Rapp might be it's probably the biggest battle on the team heading into training, and probably the biggest question mark of who actually is going to make it, and does one of these guys get cut?
And the highest variance of what the level of play could be this year there too. Like, like you could Bishop could have figured it out and is just like awesome all of a sudden, or they all just have no idea what they're doing and Rapp's out there on an island all season and they're rotating the 3 of them. Like, you could tell me either one's true and I could believe it.
That would scare me. I hope
that would be scary.
And Hamlin, also Hamlin point real quick. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I mean, he signed a 1-year, $2 million deal in free agency, coming off a year where he started 17 or almost all the game. I don't know how many he started, but he started every game he played almost. And he, that's kind of also like a sign to me that if he wasn't valued, Yeah, like he had a year of film out there, coming off an injury. And again, it's unbelievable. Like Mike said, that he was even in that position to be a starting safety of the NFL after all he went through. But in terms of football right now in the moment, it's like he's a fine backup, like Mike said, and I think that Forrest is intriguing too. It's funny because when you're so good and you have there's no right guard battle, there's no center battle, there's no left guard battle, there's everything. You're like, oh, let's go Derek Forrest, because like that's the privilege of having a good team is talking about these like vet minimum or these low contracts for 1 year and hoping that they pan out and surprise you and get all excited about it. That's why I love the offseason right now with the Bills, because you can talk about these like no-name guys that like had some moments, and like it doesn't really matter if they turn out or not, because your team's going to be a contender regardless of what Derek Forrest does. But if he does something, oh, that's amazing. So it's pretty cool.
I completely agree. It's better than hoping that Vince Young turns into a star quarterback all of a sudden. Like it's a lot better position. So yeah, I'm there with you. But I think we covered a lot of ground here. The one thing I wanted to bring up, you guys haven't listened to this yet, but I listened to it. And if you want to listen to it over the next week, that's fine. But it dropped today. Pablo Torre finds out. Dropped an episode with Mike Florio today that the NFL and NFLPA basically went to an independent arbiter that determined the NFL owners colluded against NFL quarterbacks to hold down their guaranteed pay. Basically, after the Watson contract, like they specifically outline in this podcast, guys, that the Deshaun Watson trade was unequivocally the worst contract signed in the history of professional sports, and caused the owners to have a meeting during this next summer and say, we can't let this happen ever again, basically. Very interesting things. You guys can listen to it at your whim. I would suggest everybody listen to it just to see like how this league actually works. But Lamar Jackson text messages in there, like demanding guaranteed money over text. Eric DaCosta claiming that his phone microphone couldn't work to negotiate. Wasn't working all summer, apparently. Just couldn't get that gnarly phone fixed to talk to Lamar on the phone. So just some weird things. Yeah, multimillionaire. Couldn't get a new iPhone. Couldn't get something in there. This MacBook has FaceTime right on it too. You could do that, but I mean, a Zoom call, something. I don't know. But interesting times there. And it just makes me think our quarterback just signed a big old deal. And just wondering how it affected him. I don't think he really matters into this because I don't think Josh was ever asking for a fully guaranteed contract. But it's interesting when you talk about this big money getting thrown around for guys and how these things work. Like you got to remember these owners are willing to do anything to keep their money around.
Yeah. I haven't seen what the thing that you're referencing to, but just my opinion on it, because I love to give uninformed opinions without facts. I get why they did it. Like the Watson contract was ridiculous, and it had the ability to reset the market. And if I was any one of the other 31 owners in the league, not named Jimmy Haslam, I'd be like, dude, you are a fucking idiot. Like, I apologize for swearing, but I would be like, what are you doing? You're giving this max fully guaranteed contract to a creep.
I was gonna say a predator, but
a predator. It's okay. All because he didn't want to go to Cleveland. Like, and that's what people always forget. Like, Cleveland almost lucked out. He almost didn't go to Cleveland. He almost went elsewhere. And then Cleveland probably actually would have been a good team in recent years because quarterback wouldn't have been the one thing holding them back. And the only way Haslam convinced him to go to Cleveland was a fully guaranteed contract. And then everybody suddenly thinks, oh, this is the new market. This is what I deserve. No, like one outlier shouldn't change the entire market because a team is desperate and stupid. The problem is obviously it's unethical to collude and morally wrong as well. So basically the NFL owners did do something wrong, but I completely understand why they did it. And I actually kind of agree with them in this instance, but they still should probably pay the price because if it's proven, you said that there is text messages, then they should ultimately pay the price.
The independent arbiter determined that there was no collusion, apparently.
Oh, really?
So that is the final say. But if you got a lot of money, But
Yeah,
I was gonna say, if you
I
read
would-
through the text and you make your own conclusion from what I've gathered from the show, it's like, what else could this be?
Well, and then like you got to define what is collusion. What is the definition of like talking this
And-
stuff over? Like,
and does a text message, like, does a text
That-
5 text
yeah.
messages count as agreeing to collude, or is it just a conversation? Like, does collusion mean a signed contract? Does it mean like we made this verbal agree? Like, yeah, there's a lot of different ways where like legally they can probably weasel out of being called for collusion, because exactly what you said. What does that mean? Like in this sense,
Right.
But no, that's interesting. But and couldn't have been around a worse player or human overall. So I'm
shout
never,
out the Cleveland Browns. The gift.
I'm
that
never going to
keeps
shy
on
away
giving.
from this. I hate Deshaun Watson. Like, there's only
Yeah.
one player in this league I truly like hate, and it's Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. Well, thank God we don't have to watch him play football this year at all. So that's a plus. I hope to have a nice recovery. Sure, get healthy. Never want anybody hurt, but I don't want to see him play football anymore. But yeah, this is
You're far too kind.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is the crazy lengths though that owners will go. But Lamar, like, hey, you're right. Like, it shouldn't be surprising. Like, why would they want to dole out that money for this if they don't have to? Like, it should just be smart business sense more than anything. But just the secrecy, the everything, the NFL, just a shady organization. Don't forget that, people. Just remember what we're dealing with. You always try to question what they're up to. That's about it, guys. You guys got anything else before we go here?
I got nothing but these train wreck hats. They're cool. They're stylish. You see, Jake has one. I got a Sabres themed one.
I got to get one, fellas.
We'll need to get one for you soon. But you can find these on Etsy. We're selling these. So if you want to look cool like me and Jake, go.
And I'm gonna put the link right in the comments here. So if you're on YouTube here, or if you're listening, go to YouTube or just go to Etsy/shop/Trainwreck Sports. But the shop link is in there. So yeah, go get everything we got. New stuff will be coming. But guys, we paid the bills here. Shout out to Picasso's, our presenting sponsor here tonight. Picasso'sPizza.net. Get your pizza anywhere nationwide. For AJ Spolsky and Mike Bunt, this is Jake Micah signing off. Have a great night, folks. Stay cool and go Bills.